Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac, the podcast that explores the intersection of finance and astrology, where we use a combination of spirituality and logic to help us connect the dots in the markets. Hosted by Corinne, Florence, and Marinin, who both come from a diverse background, bringing with them a wealth of knowledge and experience in the realms of astrology, cryptocurrency, trading, philosophy, investment strategy, and of course, Bitcoin. In each episode, we explore the economics of the markets following the evolution of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies through each moon cycle and astrological transit. Join us on this journey as we explore the intersection of these two worlds that are often thought to be at odds with one another, finance and astrology. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor, a day trader, or just starting to dip your toes into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain, Bitcoin Zodiac is the podcast for you. So sit back, relax, and come and expand your consciousness with us as we explore the world of the financial markets through an astrological lens. Today on the Bitcoin Zodiac, we have the absolute pleasure of interviewing Andrew Meadow. He's an intuitive evolutionary astrologer who's been practicing for over 20 years. His real passions lie in astrology, crypto, and also dancing. Please enjoy this interview. Good morning, Andrew. Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac. Such a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning to you.
So excited to have you here and to pick your brain and get all sorts of, already just from talking to you as we've started this, I'm like ready to dive in and ask you a million questions. But I think we can start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with crypto, astrology, both, and this whole realm.
Sure. I think it's also awesome to be here. Thanks for having me. I got started with astrology when I was around 17, 18 years old. So going back 20 years or so, I was looking for a source of universal truth that was outside of religion or outside of psychology, something that was at the essence of all these things. And when I discovered astrology, just a light went off in my head and I was like, wow, this really works, especially when I was casting charts of my family members and myself. It gave me greater insights into people's instincts, the way people are wired, why, why people came in as a certain type. But over those course of 20 years, I went from, basic horoscope and Western astrology. And then I would say over the last few years, much deeper into what's called evolutionary astrology, which is seeing astrology through the lens of the soul. Journey through this lifetime. So it gets a bit of a more of a zoomed out perspective. It's not so much caught up in the cosmetics of, if you're born with this, you're an angry person, or it's not fatalistic. So that's been a big part of my astrology journey. And then for crypto, was always interested in crypto. I tried to buy Bitcoin in 2012, 2013. I couldn't figure it out. So I just didn't buy it. And then I just watched it moon over the years. And I didn't really have an understanding of it. But then around COVID, my interest was piqued and I started looking at it, especially as I started understanding more and more around decentralization. And as an astrologer, coming years and the coming decades the signs are all over with the Aquarian energies coming forward that this decentralization that's where we're headed. And the time of centralized power is behind us. So I was looking at crypto with curiosity, but also understanding that 99% of the coins I was looking at were smoke and mirrors, were moonshots, were based on nothing, were copycats of something else. And so to sift through all that, I have gone through hundreds of coins over the last few years, looking for the gems that have the potential to be crypto infrastructure coins for the next few decades.
Wow. So touching on the evolutionary astrology, I know that that's very like Pluto influenced, I think, and very quite Pluto focused. And so I guess we could jump straight into Pluto and Aquarius. Like, how are you feeling about that? I mean, We're loving it over here at the Bitcoin Zodiac. We feel like we were born for this. But tell us your perspective on Pluto and Aquarius and how that may shape society and shape crypto moving forward.
Yeah, sure. So the Pluto archetype, the whole idea of transformation and radical change and death and rebirth and just this entire shift in the collective taking place in Aquarius, which is not only the sign of the people, but it's the sign of progressive beliefs and humanism, standing up, speaking truth to power. This through the lens of technology, which is Aquarian connection, that which like makes us greater communities, groups. Aquarius ideals are going to be completely transformed. So here we are at the very beginning of Pluto going into Aquarius in early 2024. Over the course of the next 2 decades, we're going to see radical shifts. The thing with the early degrees of Aquarius and the early degrees of any sign is that they're a little bit immature. Not that they're childish or childlike, but that they show sometimes the shadow expressions or the immaturity of the sign. So in Aquarius, that shadow expression is usually rebellion, or it's like there's an immaturity of pushing back against something recklessly without facts because of frustration or anger. And a higher expression, Aquarius is about justice, equality. There's this feeling of like what's fair and how do we take back power from the polarity point of Aquarius, which is the opposite sign, which is Leo. And that whole Pluto and Leo generation, I mean, very much personified by and regardless of political beliefs, but very personified by in the United States, like Donald Trump or Joe Biden. Like it doesn't matter which side you're on. It's just that generation, there's this domineering authoritarian, a lot of people refer to it as the patriarchy, just taking power over others. It's interesting also that Aquarius is the sign of democracy, and yet in our country, in many democracies, most people don't actually vote. It's a strange phenomenon, everyone thinks democracy is freedom, and in the United States, I think it's like less than 1/3 of the population votes. So why don't they vote? And to me, it's clear because they don't think it matters. They thought it mattered. So democracy has its original underpinnings in the ideas of 300 years ago when Pluto was last in Aquarius, right? In the late 1770s, we saw such realizations such as, the Bill of Rights, the United States Revolution was taking the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, the Industrial Revolution. Revolution energy is very encapsulated by the Aquarius archetype. So radical transformation by way of revolution, we're in for some deep transformations. And talk about Pluto and Aquarius, we also have to talk about where we just came out of, the whole Pluto and Capricorn, which really started the conversation. I mean, Pluto and Capricorn began, and about a year later, Bitcoin was born, almost as a counter answer to what was going on with the banks and the financial crisis and the absolute craziness of printing of money and the fiat system. The whole Pluto and Capricorn saga is about top-down hierarchy, controlling, from a place of big business and government, and we see the failures of it over the course from everything from the Arab Spring 2012 all the way through in the United States, which takes a center point in the world news, just like people looking at the US for leadership. Donald Trump coming in and and then also all the other authoritarian leaders around the world that had their time in the sun. There's been this public distrust in government. Can we trust? And then finally COVID happens and people are just, governments are saying, put on this mask and don't go outside and you can't be with your neighbors, and how each country dealt with it, and then the vaccine and all that, how that woke up so many people. Why are you putting this in my body? Who are you? Where did this come from? All the questions that are asked. So it's almost like the whole Pluto and Capricorn time has been about distrust in government policies, the realization that who we have elected or the systems itself that have been in place are broken, and that it's not so much about electing the next politician who's going to change things. The entire system is broken. So we collapse, that would be catastrophic. but we do want the system to dissolve and evolve, right? We want it to happen in some sort of incremental way where our lives aren't crazily disrupted, where we can rely that, we open the faucet, water's going to come out and electricity is going to work. But at the same time, we don't want people to lose their minds. But the thing with Pluto and Aquarius is that you're going to see a rise of anger. And in 2026, a lot of astrologers are looking forward. 2024 is a year of radical transformation. Certainly, there's a lot of shakeups. It's going to be a choppy year, ups and downs. But when we get to 25 and 26 and other astrological transits meet that Pluto and Aquarius energy, such as the Neptune-Saturn conjunction that's happening in the spring of 2026, we might see some really wild energies that we haven't seen in hundreds of years. And with the rise of technology, Aquarius, and the people, Aquarius, we might see things that we never thought possible. It's almost like the countercultural perspective, or the one that's speaking truth to power. It's more than just whistleblowers. Like in the Pluto and Capricorn time, we saw the Me Too movement, women rising up, whistleblowers. I think it's going to be a lot more than that, where people realize they're giving their power away and that they're reclaiming it back, which brings us full circle to crypto. Because how can they reclaim their power back? Using what infrastructure? The internet is great, but we're controlled by it just as much as we're using it, right? Big tech, the biggest companies in tech, Google still owns almost all the search pages, right? And so there's a certain conditioning that's happening. When you're searching for something, you're being told this is the answer. You don't really know, is this the answer I'm looking for? Or there's so much conditioning that's happening, and corruption we saw with Facebook ads, in the elections and interference. These tools are being used against us. So the people are going to be rising up looking for answers. I know this is a very long-winded response, but I'll take
keep going. I love it.
So one of the themes of the Aquarian revolutionary energies, that is the theme for the next 20 plus years, is decentralization. What does this mean, decentralization? Bitcoin really started the conversation around this when it came out with with the blockchain technology, and it worked, where there was no middleman, there was no escrow, no one had to hold your money, and no one had to be a middleman for you to transact with someone across the world. Never in the history of humanity was that ever been able to be done before. It was so powerful, the government couldn't shut it down. In other words, they couldn't call someone and just unplug a computer. It's like the internet. You can't really shut it down once it's up. It's always on someplace, right? So, but Bitcoin showed that you don't need a middleman anymore. Of course, there's a lot of things within the Bitcoin astrology chart, which we could talk about a bit later, that we could really dive into Bitcoin itself. But one of the key takeaways of Bitcoin was that it was born in anonymity, right? It was born in its Satoshi, its founder, didn't want to be identified. Had he been identified, he would have been certainly jailed or punished or something. And he understood that. So he created it as almost like a, here, humanity, take with you, run with it, But Bitcoin is pretty old by now. It's 2024. It's born in January of 2009. I mean, you think about what phones looked like in 2009. We didn't even have Uber, So like it's been a lot of changes have happened in blockchain technology. And so Ethereum coming out in 2015 with its programmable app interface, where suddenly DeFi opens up, which is this idea of decentralized finance, where now you could borrow against these magical internet money coins and leverage them and trade against them. And there's no regulation. There's no, anything can happen. You can lose it all. You can make it, the returns were crazy, because in the early days, especially because there's no regulation. There was no one saying what you could or couldn't do. So people, there's the meme coins, right? The Dogecoin and Shiba and all this stuff, because you don't see that on the New York Stock Exchange. You can't, it's all just, and so crypto gets a certain cultural affinity for counterculture. In the NFTs, you see it, and almost like it has a vibe of a little bit like Burning Man, where there's this countercultural push of it's almost like an FU to the man, so to speak,
Yeah.
where it's you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to get these credit card offers from you in the mail, these crazy interest rates. Like, why should I listen to any of this? So it's this conversation starter. I think Bitcoin really started the conversation around, we don't need the government to transact. Well, if we don't need them to transact, and then Ethereum came out and opened the conversation around like programming apps. Of course, all these Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're like babies. Bitcoin is like, I don't want to call it broken at all because it's so useful and so powerful, but the proof of work mechanism and the amount of power that it takes to run the network is a thorn in its own side. And Ethereum, its crazy gas fees architecture, also it inhibits it from actually scaling. So then what is the answer? And I think that we haven't yet seen the infrastructure of what is going to run humanity's tech rails and from a decentralized place. It's almost like it would be a new network, just like our internet. I send you an email. It doesn't matter if I'm on Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, you're getting my email because there's a standardized code of how emails are sent over the internet. It doesn't matter where you are, what language, right? I think that the crypto infrastructure of our future is going to be similar, and Bitcoin is a part of it, Ethereum is a part of it, but these are just attributes of something that's much bigger that's growing around it.
Mm-hmm.
Energies are about coming together. And it's also interesting that capitalism, which was, we're taught in our schools, we're conditioned that capitalism is the best. There is no better, right? And if you go back 300 years and 400 years ago, you hear that monarchy is the best. There's nothing better. God wants monarchy. That's what they would have told you. That's what the church said. That's what the state said, right? And we're conditioned that like communism lost, socialism lost, and capitalism is the best. But capitalism creates a system of winners and losers. There's always a loser with capitalism. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Corporations, where are they putting their toxic waste? They're putting it in some community and it's going in the river and kids are getting cancer, but they don't care. They're answering to the profits of the market. So capitalism is just another, if people believe that capitalism was the end all, they'd be fooling themselves. Humanity is continuously evolving. It's never parked itself on one economic system and said, this is going to be it forever, right? So there's always going to be something better coming. So based off my studies and my understanding of astrology, I believe it's something around the lines of what is being framed as generative economics. And generative and regenerative farming, you hear a lot about that, using, let's say, hydroponics and water to grow, how to squeeze more food and out of the earth, and regenerative, it's not just about sustainability or recycling, but it's about, there's this idea around creating a win-win-win system for everyone. And in order to do so, we have to look at some of the ugly things that capitalism has caused, which is there's a lot of homelessness around the world in cities that are, let's say, warm weather. People just, tent cities pop up everywhere. There is no talk about, what about human dignity? Or what about children starving or war-torn communities all around the world? Do they have toilets? Do they have basic food? Why are people still starving? That doesn't even make sense with the amount of abundance that we have. And so people are waking up. I do see a larger a larger section of the youth rising up. I think the under 30 crowd, I would say, that Pluto and Sagittarius generation is fired up around themes around freedom, liberation, and doing things in an optimistic way, which, but the shadow expression of that is judgment. I'm right, you're wrong, and dogma, and polarization. So it's going to take time for them to grow up, and really embody the higher ideals. But they play very well with this Aquarian energy because it's a sextile, the Aquarius to the Sagittarian energy. And once we start talking a little bit about Aquarius energy, we realize that a lot, if we look at Aquarius in the Zodiac, the signs that it makes trines to, or what a trine is, a benefic placement, or the signs that it makes a square to, or it gives tension, these are very interesting points. So if we just looked at, let's say, Scorpio, the Pluto and Scorpio generation, which was born in the 1980s. In the 80s, there was the AIDS crisis, different ideas around sexuality, empowerment, and all the glamour of the 80s, all that Scorpio energy carried forward. People born with that, they're the revealer of secrets. And it was very interesting to me that when Pluto went into Aquarius last year for about 3 months, that fellow David Grush, I think his name was, he came forth with whistleblowing about UFOs, which is such an Aquarian topic. And he was born with Pluto in Aquarius. It would take someone of that frequency to be able to come forth and speak that. So Aquarius making a natural square to the Scorpio axis also gives like, there's like a lot of talk around debt, which is Scorpio, owed money, power or power dynamics. You know, and it's like shining a light on things that we haven't really wanted to see. Should I take a pause here and let you guys talk, or keep going? I can keep going.
I'm loving all of this, and I could listen to you all day. I have like a million questions. I'm like, more on this, more on that. Claire, how are you doing there? Are you just as mesmerized as I am?
Totally, totally. And I want to touch on something that you sort of mentioned that I thought was that I always find is a really interesting contradiction, in that, you know, we see kind of when I saw DeFi, or I really understood DeFi, I was like, this is the most egalitarian thing that there is. Like, you're literally an Ethereum address interacting with this. No one cares. Like, if DeFi doesn't care where your dad plays golf. DeFi doesn't care where you went to school. You know, all of these kind of things. DeFi doesn't care about your race, your gender, your sexuality, anything like that. You're literally just an Ethereum address. And so I always find it really interesting, like, come on, where are all the liberals getting behind this? You know, come on, Bernie, why aren't you getting behind DeFi? Oh, because you want to control the equality. Okay, cool. Like, you know, so I think that that's also quite an interesting contradiction in that as well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Really good point, right? Like it would appear that DeFi has all the ingredients for liberals to celebrate, but take a closer look. What is DeFi? It's outside of the traditional system. And
Yep.
most liberals, I would say, they would want to feel safe within the traditional system. So they would feel threatened by something that's absolutely free. You know, they still want to control, and that's really what it comes to. Controlling the narrative for their own perspectives, controlling it. If they don't feel they're in control of the financial narrative, they want to be the ones to give other people permission, as opposed to things really being truly permissionless, which is rap.
Yeah, I think that's wild.
It's a good point.
On that, and just expanding, what about Ethereum? And what are you, maybe even the astrology, if you've looked into the astrology of Ethereum, how do you feel about Ethereum? Because ever since it did move to a proof of stake, there's been a lot of talk in the crypto community about it becoming less decentralized, and a lot of centralization moving around that. So how do you feel just in general on that, and what you've seen from an astrological basis?
So I've studied Ethereum from an astrological basis less, but I've still looked at the chart. It's fascinating. Ethereum was born with a 0 degrees. Again, 0 degrees is like this baby, over idealistic idea of Sagittarius rising, it's like Sagittarius rules innovation. 0 degrees is like the very beginning of innovation, and they did. I mean, the smart contract it's just incredible what they were able to like foresee. Completely new concept for cryptocurrency, right? It was like a new layer opened up. I know that they moved to this proof of staking, but I'm going to be a little bit bold here. And being that I've studied hundreds of cryptos, that doesn't make me an expert. I'm not a computer scientist. Read a lot of white papers and spoke to a lot of people. And from my understanding is that proof of work or proof of stake are not truly decentralized. Proof of stake is plutocratic. In other words, it amasses all of its power in the ones who have the highest amounts of stake, or in other words, another way of saying it, the ones with the most power have the most wealth. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? So proof of stake is not necessarily as radical. In fact, when I look at cryptos, if I see anything with the proof of work or proof of stake consensus mechanism, which means that is how the network comes to an agreement with itself, I tend to brush it off and don't think anything that it has a place in our future. I think it has a place in our past. I think that we would be needing to see some sort of novel consensus mechanism that is far beyond proof of work or proof of stake, proof of something else. And there are some interesting coins that have come out, over the last few years that have caught my attention. But I do think Ethereum is a powerhouse. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's the home of DeFi. I'm excited by Ethereum. I mean, the gas fees are crazy, but it also, there's a lot of argument that the gas fees actually, give it a certain amount of solidity and, but give it a certain amount of structure, within its own ecosystem, and it repels certain types of projects that wouldn't, scammier projects per se, even though there's tons of scams on built, minted on the Ethereum blockchain. But I think also other interesting points with Ethereum is that it has Saturn on its ascendant too, which there's a lot of serious work behind it. In other words, there's something here that has staying power. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that it's proven its ground, and it's holding a tremendous amount of collective power in the financial realm of crypto, which has its own world. And I think in the summer of DeFi, which was I think what they call the summer of 2020, like at that time, DeFi was the thing. Like, it's like the way we talk about AI right now. We were talking about DeFi then. So it'd be interesting to see how all these different ideas converge amongst themselves, which again, I believe will be within new crypto infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And it is funny how we sort of get that bubble before we actually sort of get the real technology. Like I even think of that in terms of NFTs, like the sort of idea, and I mean, even the technology behind NFTs, I think is going to be so important in the future, like tokenizing real world assets, all of these kind of things. But it's like we get this frantic kind of bubble where everybody's obsessed with it, and this kind of frenzied energy around it. And then, but no real adoption, like no real use cases. And I think then the bubble bursts, it kind of goes out of fashion a little bit. And even in the next cycle, like we don't hear people like even talking about like DeFi, like, oh, we're going to have another DeFi summer. And I'm kind of like, hang on a second, DeFi is so important. And we haven't really seen the full evolution and expression of DeFi yet. So I think it's interesting that, I think this year we'll have AI is going to go crazy. And, we obviously do have some working AI kind of things, but I think we're just scratching the surface of what this can do. Like we're still in overpriced JPEG mode when it comes to AI. We haven't even seen what AI is going to do. How do you feel about AI, and how do you see its evolution?
Sure. Those are great points. And just to your point about DeFi, I agree with you. I think it's a bit like setting the table where there, like the tablecloth might have been Bitcoin, and then like someone put down a plate and that was Ethereum, and then someone put down a fork and that was DeFi. Like there's different elements, and that time is circular, and that as we go through the decade, we're going to come back to these original points with, with the newness and the innovation that's further out there in crypto, and revisit things like DeFi and actually empower people around the world.
Mm-hmm.
As for AI, artificial intelligence, it's the narrative right now in crypto. Natural bedfellows. I mean, even if you just studied astrology, you would see Aquarius, crypto. Aquarius rules artificial intelligence. Aquarius rules, the people. It rules technology, innovation, and all these things. So AI as a topic point is just going to get stronger and more powerful. I do think that the convergence of crypto, AI, and decentralization will make some sort of three-way combination infrastructure where something will take hold, something that will on its own based off of programming, logic, and be able to like be programmed in a sense to serve humanity and be interacted as an infrastructure. There will be something like that that will be born, that will be the rails of like a new form of internet that we're not. If it feels funny to say the internet is like you plug in a computer and you're on it, but there's the internet that we know and that we have is essentially a database. It's a library. It's an oracle. You ask it a question, you get an answer. Yes, you can connect with people, right? Instagram and Twitter and email and so forth. But there isn't a way to hold the economic power of people within this technology. And then, right? So there was this Balaji, if you're familiar with his work, The Nation State. Yeah, he's an ideal, right? Like you can start a nation state in your bedroom, and you can just connect with other people, and before you know it, you have a few hundred people, a few thousand people, and now you're a community, and now you can actually you have so much economic power, you know, connected to each other, you can actually, you know, negotiate with the old world, which is like countries, you know? So I do think that AI in general is really humans' intelligence being reflected back to them. It's not sentient, but I do believe, and this is maybe comes from my psychedelic, my psychedelic perspective, is that it could be. In other words, that over a period of time that and the intelligence could have some sort of sentient abilities, which humans feel like, how could it know that? You know, we didn't program it that way. And I think that it could tell things that would be surprising. But I think we're very, very early on in the game. There are fears of this technology getting out of hand, but there's always going to be fears around new technology. There were fears around email when it came out. I mean, there's always going to, I do believe people are good for the most part. I do believe that more people, you know, that will hold it accountable. And that even when bad things do happen by the cause of AI, that they would create such a tumult that people would rise up and be like, this is not okay. Like we saw 250 years ago or so, whatever, you know, was it late 17th and 70s, where people saw what was going on with humans and they were like, we need a Bill of Rights, like humans' rights. And then in France, there's also like, what rights do humans have for each other? I think that we're going to see a universal rights around technology. Am I interacting with an AI right now, or is this a human being? I need to know that for myself. That might be a law, right? Or, you know, where did this essay or this paragraph or this newspaper article come from? What is it? And the source of truth, again, we're always going to come back to truth because people want to understand, like, it's fine if it's AI, maybe it's great, maybe the art is amazing, maybe the material is awesome, but I have the right to know. So I think there's going to be like, there's this universal basic rights around it. And I think also that it's going to be used as a tool to see how to make the world a better place. I mean, ChatGPT was the fastest growing app, right? Like history, like so many people just jumped on it just to ask questions and to talk to it. I think that what we're going to see over time is that it's really our own intelligence being reflected back to us, and that it may give us different ideas on how to conjoin things in our reality to get more power. Specifically, when I say power, I mean, yes, power and power of the people. Like, yeah, let's get our power back. But I also mean energy. I think that there's a lot of sources of energy in this world that are untapped. If you think about it, electricity wasn't invented. It was discovered. Right? It was always there, and now it's being harnessed so that you and I can have this conversation, and we have lighting in our home, and it's here now, right? But was it? I think there's a lot of energy and a lot of what they'll call free energy within our own atmosphere, within the oceans, within magnetics, and science has only scraped the surface of how to extract this energy from our world. Like, I heard recently this amazing, there was this fellow who I follow on Instagram. He went on a vision quest with a shaman to a desert for 5 days. When they get to the desert, they look around. It's a desert. There's no water. And the shaman walks up to these little tiny desert succulent plants and takes a cup and starts squeezing certain plants over it, and water starts coming out. And he gives it to him and he drinks it. And the realization is that, you know, I walk into the desert, I don't see any water. There's no water here. And then when you break a pattern and you're able to spot things, you're able to see things differently. Probably there's even more water available than the shaman knows about, but he doesn't know that yet, you know? And so I think that there's a tremendous amount of power that's going to be unlocked with the help of AI, with the help of this artificial intelligence, which has been invented by humanity. So it's not so artificial after all. It's really our own intelligence. It's the whole internet, right? They'll scrape Reddit and they'll give you answers. Well, they know all this because humans have said all this. Yes, it's a supercomputer brain, but it doesn't have feelings, right? So like, it's not this over fetishization of AI being like some sort of enemy of humanity, as well as being like some sort of that we're going to be robots to the AI, is all just coming from this dystopian sci-fi like wildness. But in actuality, imagine AI gave us capabilities to figure out how to solve certain issues around like world hunger, or how to deal with things in an easier way on a societal level. And then also the innovations coming out of science and math with this whole Pluto and Aquarius energy, which is deeply rooted in AI and deeply rooted in nature. Anytime Pluto has gone through Aquarius, there's always been an expansion of travel or expansion of ideas by way of travel. So like 2 cycles ago, Columbus discovered America or whatever it was, or, the South America was conquered and, the Bible or the Christian church was exported outward, ideas were out. Last time around, we had the steamboat, the hot air balloon, the submarine were invented in that time frame. I do think that we're going to see new forms of travel through space, as well as, over the course of the next 21 years, brand new ways of getting from point A to point B and faster. And the faster disbursement of ideas and information through decentralization. And I think it keeps coming back to this decentralization. Humanity is walking towards decentralization. Its back is to centralization. But nobody gives up power easily. If you have power, you don't just be like, you know what, here you go, why don't you take it? That's not been the norm. So there's going to be like this flailing or like this going down swinging or this desperate holding on to power by centralized interests. And it's not that we don't need anything centralized. I think that there's a great hybrid model where there needs to be some sense of centralization so there isn't anarchy, but at the same time, allowing people to live their lives. Like, what is universal basic income really about? If you really get to its essence, it's that no human should be on the street. Like, everyone should have at the very, very, very basic level, food and shelter. Like, imagine every human on the planet had food and shelter. Maybe it wasn't the best food, and maybe it was like the lowest shelter you can ever imagine, just a teeny bed and a teeny little thing, but they were protected from the elements and they had basic food. And if they want more than that, go get a job. And if not, you could just stay there your whole life. Like, that's what humanity is going to give to the rest of humanity as a basic right, as opposed to all this judgment of like, well, they don't work and they're on drugs and all this type of like judgment consciousness, and people really are realizing that the power is in the hands of the few. And even the ones that we hear about on the news that are in power, those are not the ones in power. Those are the ones that we're being told. The ones that are really in power, I don't even think anyone knows their names. Like, they exist. They're there. They're holding on. They're pulling the levers of the political systems and the financial systems. They're not the names that you hear. They're so powerful that they don't get mentioned. I do think that, but it doesn't matter who they are. And it's not about conspiracy theories, which I'm not into conspiracy theories. I look at them like agents of fear. And I don't play that game, but I understand that there is a semblance of truth to these different conspiracy theories. So, you could just look at the world. I mean, just look at what's happening at the news that we're being fed and pumped. You turn on the news, it's just like on one page, how many times do you see the word kill or murder, gun, shooting? Like, there's other things happening in the world every single day. Hell, there's so many things happening in our lives every single day that have nothing to do with killing and murdering guns, but like we're being programmed, or even the programming on Netflix or watching, it's like, oh, top 10 serial killers. Like, who's pumping this stuff out? Like, it's pretty wild that like we just take it and just like we call it, entertainment. Why is it so entertaining to see killing? And it's pretty wild also, like the repression around sexuality and the whole pushback, in men in particular. It's really it's the great rising of the divine feminine in all, in men and women. You see, patriarchy, it doesn't just punish women, it punishes, real men are not in patriarchy.
Yeah.
Patriarchy, like men, it doesn't discriminate. And this whole idea of the alpha male or being tough and showing tough and killing people because in justification, war is just justified murder. And there's souls that come in this world in this lifetime to learn about courage on the battlefield, and that's their lesson, and that's what they've come in with, and that's their thing. But war is a very ancient and old energy, and so I think that people are like realizing like they don't want to send their kids into battle to kill other people's kids over any idea. Like, who cares? So we're taking your land, you're taking my land, but there's a lot of fighting that's going to happen with Pluto and Aquarius around resources. Why is this? Well, Pluto and Aquarius makes a tense square aspect to Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus rules food. It rules the earth itself. There's going to be a fight over resources and a fight over water. Aquarius is interesting. It's an air sign, and yet it's known as the water bearer. Aquarius rules water rights. So you might see two countries parked next to each other. One of them has giant rivers flowing through it, and the other one is reliant on the rivers being flowed through it. And country A might just say, you know what, we need more water now. You don't get any. And what are the people supposed to do now? Like, who made an invisible line in the sand and said, this is where the country starts, this is where it ends. We're all humans, we're all sharing this land. Like, there's got to be a better way around this. And I think that we also see the failure of like these older, like United Nations and the World Health Organization. I mean, that was taken COVID. Like, who cared what they said? You know, we were listening to our friends and family more than we were listening to any PR statements with people like telling us what to do. Nobody trusted them anymore. There was public distrust in government. And of course the government was pushing the vaccine. And it's not about whether you're pro the vaccine or anti the vaccine. Why did the government push it so hard? Because they could not handle to have thousands of people dead in the streets. There would be complete chaos for the government if the morgues were overflowing. So even if there was like a chance that someone would get sick from this thing and it's a 0.1% chance, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to say, listen, 99% of the population is going to be fine. So they're going to roll the dice. But then people are like, wait, I don't know where, so like, again, it's not so much about any of these things within like the decision, like, should I have had it, the vaccine, should I have not, or am I going to revolt or am I not? It's not so much, it's just about this. These are all tools of awakening. And think of COVID, precursor of awakening for what's about to happen. This decade is just getting warmed up, and COVID was like a pebble in our shoe compared to what's about to happen. Now, I don't mean that from a place of fear. I just mean it from a place of radical change and people waking up even more and more and more. Secrets are going to be revealed, which are going to people will be pissed off, like what the government knew about certain things and what was hidden. Whistleblowers are just going to be coming out of the closet faster and faster and faster. And there's going to be this great reckoning of people just upset and using whatever power they have to make changes, whether that's voting power, which is weak in a sense, or radical changes where something on the level of Bitcoin, where people are just inventing their own systems outside of the traditional where things can be controlled or taxed, right? Taxes is another thing that's ruled by Scorpio. It's also getting a look in the eye. What are we paying taxes for? A lot of our governments these Western governments are bankrupt. They're all just printing. They're just printing money. Absolutely just printing. I mean, this doesn't end well. Whether they can kick the can down the road 2 years or 20 years, this does not end well. Sovereign debt crisis is usually the beginning of how countries go out of business. And that's where like other countries come in and swoop in. But another thing that's interesting with Aquarius is that, and this speaks to all the oppressed people in the world, China, China has a lot of, I have to pull up its chart, I don't have it up right now, but has a lot of Aquarian energy in its chart. And so it's going to really be affected deeply by this Pluto in Aquarius. And other countries that also have it, Israel has it. So like this whole Israel-Palestine crisis of sorts, it's just getting warmed up. There's a lot more senseless bloodshed coming. I mean, when you're looking at this through the signs of astrology, it's not like anyone's making peace tomorrow. It's like more people have to, unfortunately, like need to like learn about themselves through separation before there's a coming together. That could take years. Any in the world are going to get a lot of attention. So, in the whole Israel-Palestine thing, it's like the Palestinians appear much more oppressed than the Israelis. So Israel's in a tight spot because of that. And we saw last year Pluto went into Aquarius for 3 months. The people within Israel, this before the whole crisis took hold, they were revolting against their own judicial overhaul, so these were already like the signs were there. The country was already weakening from the inside. And so in China also, this whole China-Taiwan thing, well, no one knows when they're going to make their move, right? But they're going to make their move. They've been pretty much like preparing the world saying, this is our land, we're going to take it back. Okay, that's an Aquarian conversation. There's people there who don't want to be taken back. So what is that going to look like? I think the Chinese people themselves are just living under complete, everyone's whispering over there. I've been to China, there's certain conversations you just don't talk. There's certain conversations you just don't have in a communist country because it's dangerous. And then the whole idea with Russia and Ukraine also, the Ukrainians being oppressed, and then even the Russian people themselves. Like what happens if Putin dies? Now who takes over? Would that be a complete regime change, or would everyone just copy paste whatever he did? These are questions that will come up over time as all oppressed people around the world will have greater voices. And I speak on this in a societal way too, like the LGBTQ community, people trans in countries that are third world, or like in certain countries, people get shot for being gay. Like that seems us in the Western world for sexual orientation, but that's still going on. So the world has a lot more catching up to do. Western civilization has not figured out a way to how to fix that. One of the greatest slaps in the face to the United States, I think like it was like 20 years ago when they figured out they said, okay, we're going to put democracy in Palestine, and then the Palestinian people voted in Hamas because they felt like that was their best chance of getting their needs met, and they didn't know like everything was going to happen, right? But they just and then the United States like, shoot, like we gave people democracy. What did they do? They voted in a terrorist organization. So democracy doesn't solve problems any more than capitalism solves problems. These things tend to create more problems because democracy is not liquid, and capitalism creates a systems of winners and losers. So in order to really radically change everything, which is what this whole Aquarian revolution is about, we are going to see completely new ideas. But before new ideas can take hold, the old has to die. You cannot build something brand new on a shitty foundation. I don't know if I want to say that here. Like in other words, on something that's like broken, you need things to be moved, right? Like you can see it in relationships. Like if someone's still obsessing over someone they broke up with in a relationship, it's not until they actually fully let go that someone else new can come in. You know, like the energetics have to match up, where we have to let go of the old first. So we're watching the dissolving of the old, and it's an ugly thing. And it looks like, there's a lot of darkness around the world coming up as the light comes. When the light comes, the darkness comes up at the same time. So you could focus on one versus the other. But if you're in consciousness and you're focusing and you're realizing that you're creating your own reality and you're responsible for your own thoughts, and where you put your focus is where your energy will flow, focus on joy, focus on the positive, focus on feeling good, take a walk, take a bath, spend time with a baby or a pet or, with loved ones. It's really about fulfillment and inner joy. And as much as I love astrology, I drop the whole thing sometimes when it just gets who cares? It's just another system telling people like what to do, in a sense. Like you could look at it, astrologers are a lot like doctors. If you go to a doctor who's scared, right? And the doctor's like, I don't know, 96% of people who have this die. You're like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. Like, you could just believe what the doctor's believing, then just get sick. But instead, like doctors are the ones who come in and they have a positive belief in your healing. And so there's astrologers out there, and there's people who are, of all religions, right? That they could use religion as fear-based. God hates you, God is judging you. Or they can pick up religion and be like, God loves everyone, and I love God, and everything's about love and compassion. Or, and so astrology is the same thing. You can pick up astrology and be like, oh shit, Mercury's retrograde. I'm not going to go on an airplane today. Or you could just be like, Mercury's retrograde. This should be interesting. I'm going to just make sure I'm going to dot my I's, cross my T's, and I'm going to joke about it along the way and see if there's anything that I should be paying attention to, because I'm the creator of my reality. So I'll just pay extra attention. I'll just be extra aware, but I'm not going to give it power. And so there's a lot of astrologers out there that practice a sense of fear-based astrology. And there's a lot of clients who want that information. They want to be told like, this is bad, this is good, duality, And then there's heart-based astrology or soul-based astrology, which is something more that I'm aligned with, where there is no bad or good. There's just shadow expressions. There's higher expressions. We could be in one on a Sunday. We could be in the other one on Monday. There's no right or wrong. It's all just about there's isness. I get people sometimes like when I do their chart readings, they'll be like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this bad? And they're so used to hearing like diagnoses of things about themselves. This is good. This is bad. You got a 91. You're good. You got an 81. You're not so good. Like,
are they Virgos?
In Virgos, the whole thing is with Virgo energy, this striving toward perfectionism, and seeing the flaws in everything. But if you zoom down, it's a healthy expression of Virgo, wholesomeness.
Yeah.
Everything's not about 99 trying to get to 100. It's just everything just is. It's just like this circular holding of all things, and it's just understanding of it. It's more Zen. A great enlightened Virgo of our time is Sadhguru. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah. I've been to his ashram, the Isha Yoga ashram.
Yeah, he's a real enlightened Virgo, like his whole, natural, the way that he lives. And there's different forms of, different enlightened. It's interesting to look at astrology through the enlightened people. Buddha was a tourist. you know, and like, how could you talk about desirelessness when you're born in the sign of desire? But that's just it. You have to go through all the desires of life in order to actually desire. You have to exhaust. You have to be after everything. You have to have lived. You can't just go towards desirelessness without having like fulfilled all your fantasies and desires about what you want. And I love looking at astrology through the lens of these higher archetypes. Like Ram Dass was an Aries, you know, and his whole story was that for years he was trying to be somebody. He just wanted to be somebody. You know, he just wanted to feel like he's important. But then at a higher expression, the Aries is about selfless leadership. It's just about like, oh, nobody's leading in this area. I'll just come in and and if someone else needs to come in and take over, that's okay. Like, it's not about I am this, and therefore it's just selflessness.
Yeah.
And Osho was also another one that I've looked at, very fascinating. He was a Sagittarius. His whole thing was just about radical freedom, absolutely radical freedom, and through joy and through optimism, through laughter. And I think it's interesting to look at these archetypes through higher expressions because, you know, when we look at Aquarius, it's very Pluto and Aquarius generation that's being born right now. They're really like, they're only going to be 21 years old in 21 years. So they're really going to be like imprinted with the change of when Pluto goes into Pisces and Pluto goes into Aries 20, 40, 60 years from now. This generation that's being born now with this radical innovation, radical innovative ideas, just as much as we're going to see them take hold in the next 20 years, we're also going to see the children being born at this time be very into metaphysics and physics itself and science itself ruled by Aquarius. We're going to see vast changes, leaps beyond a linear thinking, beyond rational thought. I think the science of consciousness itself will be studied, where there might be some sort of device where they'll just like shine it on you and they'll be like, oh, wow, like you're vibrating joy today. Or, oh, wow, like you've got a little anger in your aura. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me clear that out. Like there might actually be like new ways of, like the way that I look at Western medicine right now, it's incredibly primitive. Like you go to a hospital, they cut things out of you, they call it surgery, you go home. I don't know, it's pretty crazy because to me, consciousness creates form. But to anyone coming out of like the top medical schools in the country, this is seen as so innovative. Go back 100 years, 50 years, even 20 years, and look at what was innovative from a medical technology perspective. It looks a little bit barbaric. And so just like that, in 20 years from now, the medicine that's being practiced now will be seen a bit barbaric.
Well,
I
it
think
wasn't
COVID
that long ago, even that, like, especially in the Western world, that we didn't. I still don't think we have a good grasp on consciousness, but you know, it wasn't that long ago that mental health was like, oh, we need to cut something out of your brain. You know, it was only seen in the physical. There wasn't this expression of other sort of planes. And so imagine how far we can go from that in this time.
love that you said mental health. Mental health has been such a topic this last like 20, 30 years, right? Everyone focusing, like it's not just about physical health, even though physical health also got a lot better the last 20, 30 years, like jogging a couple decades ago, right? So like, and like everyone going to the gym. Like I remember my grandmother, she passed, she would tell me she'd be like, nobody went to the gym. Like she was like from Eastern Europe. She was like, there's no such thing. Women just cooked, they baked, they got water, they didn't, there was no gym. Like it was so far from the gym. She was like, why is your mother going to the gym? So anyways, so it was just funny to look because like we get so used to this is our way, this is our life. But physical health, mental health, and I think mental health has taken such a center point where therapy used to be stigmatized. It's now seen as it's mainstream. Like, you know, women on dating apps, like, do you go to therapy? Like, yeah, okay, great, like green flag, you know. So, and I and I think that
Guys, he said green flag. I just wanted to underline that one.
green flag, because like, what greater way of does it sign of taking care of oneself and taking oneself seriously? It's not just about building muscle or making money. It's like, how are you dealing with your feelings? You know, or like, what your childhood trauma? Have you looked at that? Or you're like, what have you done? What have you taken care of? Like, what are you working on? And the acceptance of like people struggling with things, it's fine. As long as you're just like aware that you're struggling with something. And if you're medicating it with it, and even if you're self-soothing with drugs every single day, like, okay, all right. Are you aware of it? Okay. Like eventually, you know, you want better for yourself, it will happen. So people there's this idea around self-awareness, which has been this whole mental health. But mental health is really health. And spiritual health will be seen over the coming decades as the new mental health, where with source, what is your connection with love? What is your connection with the divine? You don't necessarily have to believe that there's God or anything like that, but like, what is your connection with your own life force energy? You sit with yourself, you know, like, and can you hold space for someone else? So mental health doesn't mean you can hold space for someone else, but spiritual health does. It means that you know your boundaries, like from a spiritual perspective, and you're aware of your own energy, as opposed to not only just your own thoughts and your own wounding, your energy. And we are energy at our essence. You know, energy always is moving. Humans are always moving. If it's not moving, it's dead. And if it's dead, it doesn't have energy in it anymore. And so there's this understanding of movement and like what makes someone's vitality greater than the other. I think it's interesting, like how scientists will go and like they'll find some underwater animal that like has some unique properties with water, and they'll be like, we found the cure for diabetes, you know? Like, okay, cool. There might be some sort of medicinal thing in some plant or some animal in this world that we can use. That's awesome. But what they're not looking at is like, go look at people who are joyful. Go look at people who are living long lives. Go look at the people who have stuff, the glow that they have. You can see it in their eyes, the ones that are uplifters in their communities, the ones that are light workers, the healers. What have they done? Has anyone studied that? Or are we still looking in space for answers of where humanity has come from? Instead, like, what if we had greater meaning and if we were able to figure out better ways of living that combine all these systems of the past, whether, you know, it's a combination of things. Like you can ask someone who's like, you know, like, how do we measure an aura? Like energetic people can feel energy. We all can feel energy of people. Someone's giving us a bad vibe. Someone's giving us a good vibe. This room feels a little bit, this room feels expansive. We could walk into someone's bedroom and feel so alive. We could walk into someone's bedroom and get like a little bit of like a dank feeling. And there's no judgment against the person, but it just doesn't vibrationally match with us. What is that? What we're feeling? We're feeling a mismatch of sorts between our energy and theirs. Why does a clean room feel so much better than a messy room? It's energetics, right? And like, why, you know, and like, why does certain clothing feel different? And why, when we change our clothes, does it feel different? We're in the middle of the day and suddenly we just change our clothes. We might have a completely different effect on our personality. You know, a scientist might be like, well, you know, it's the colors of the fabric and this, and you did something that it's all energy. And so the studying of energy upon consciousness and upon medicine and feeling better and health in general, I think is a big part of this whole Pluto and Aquarius jump and this whole new timeline that we're entering. And we're just at the beginning of it. In June of 2024, Jupiter goes into Gemini, and it's really going to fast track all this stuff. I mean, AI, crypto, I mean, you're going to see there's a conjunction in May. The Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in May is also, I mean, there's lots of ways to look at it. There's something destabilizing about like the Earth's magnetic field and geomagnetics. We might see like more eruptions from volcanoes or earthquakes between now and 2026. But by the time, by the time that like Uranus leaves Taurus on its way out, it might lead with some surprises and eruptions, whether that's on our physical Earth itself or amongst the people or financial systems, because Taurus rules the financial systems. I said a lot there.
I think all of that actually, like where you say there's eruptions, I think I can even see it maybe even being a sort of domino effect. Like there's an eruption in the earth, which leads to eruptions in the financial system, which leads to eruptions in the people. It's like this kind of circular sort of domino effect, I feel. That's what I see from that perspective as well.
Yeah. And that's an energy that I've been or a transit with Uranus or Taurus in Uranus and Taurus that I've really been following. And I remember my mom telling me that when she was back in high school, and mom's in her 60s, and she was talking about how in 40 years' time, there was meant to be these big shifts happening in the earth, and they were studying it from a scientific level. and they were talking about the actual literal earth changing, but also the demographics of the earth changing. And we're seeing that happen so much. And I love, with like everything that you said, I really see this like unity coming with the science and the spirituality coming together. And I believe it was last year, the Nobel Prize was actually based on science and spirituality coming together. And I just love that. I'm so excited for this transformation and what's coming. And I really wanted to circle back also to, I'm personally so excited about AI, maybe because I do really love to see the bright side of everything. And I'm excited for AI to take over all those mundane, boring things that I don't want to be doing every day. I love the idea that AI gets to take over, you know, admin and just those things that AI can do so that we can step into our higher faculties as humans that I feel are suppressed right now. Because it's like, you know, Claire and I were messaging backwards and forwards today about the fact that like, it feels like I don't even have time to do things for myself sometimes and step into that higher faculty because I'm so busy on those smaller mundane things. And I'm constantly like, how can I do this for me so that I can step into, call it my higher self, that I know and I feel and I hear is like, hi, I'm here. Don't forget about me. This is the direction we're meant to be heading in. So I'm just really excited. I'm loving everything that you're saying. I'm like, yes, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I love that, outsourcing everything for AI. I'm a big fan of outsourcing and delegating and figuring out like better ways to manage my time so that I could spend more time in nature, so that I can spend more time off my phone and off my screen, so that I could be with my children, or, you know, I'm with you on that all the way. I do think AI is going to be a huge part of it. There is one crypto project that has caught my attention in a very large way. That is Tensor, trades under Tau, TAO. It's really the convergence of decentralization, AI, and crypto, and they're essentially building a neural data, like something, they're building a neural network that's greater than anything else that's being built privately in big tech within AI. I mean, at least that's the way that I see it. So I think that it will, like, I think that if we follow astrology and we follow crypto, and if we look for trends and we were to just invest as an astrologer and say, all right, what's something that's truly decentralized, it's all about AI, that can change humanity for the future, that project has a lot of attention on it. And it's been rising and rising. So there's something to watch.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and maybe actually ask you if you have the astrological chart for it. We might ask you for its natal birth time, date, first date of transaction, so we can keep an eye on that.
Actually have to dig to get this information because most people, I haven't found it on the internet. Nobody really seemed to know when the first Genesis block was mined of this. I went into their Discord, asked a lot of questions. I got different dates in February of 2021. Eventually, I found that the first one was mined January 9th, 2021. And it's a powerful chart. It's a very powerful chart. It's got the Sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. And it's interesting that Bitcoin also has its beginnings in Capricorn. There's a lot there with Jupiter, Saturn being conjunct in Aquarius for Tensor, so indicating that when Pluto goes over those degrees, about 3 to 4 years, we might see incredible gains for that coin and for that whole infrastructure of crypto and AI and decentralization. And yeah, I don't have an exact birth time for it, but I was given 3:56 p.m. January 9th, 2021. So I don't, but there's Discord in the Tensor community, we went back to the original time. But I don't know if that's the actual time. But again, like there's so much attention on Bitcoin and Ethereum and these other coins. I'm looking at these other ones, like the ones where it's like, as an astrologer, put on my astrologer glasses and now go look at these coins and be like, all right, which one will change their future? Which one is building something that can't be turned off? That's truly decentralized, that combines the best of humanity for solving problems. This coin really checks all those boxes. So I mean, I've dove deep into it. It's down the rabbit hole, but it's very interesting. Tensor, Tau, TAO.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's so interesting because I was told about this a couple of weeks ago. Like my altcoin guy, who's like deep in the tech and in the research, who does a phenomenal job. He's really bullish on this project. And again, it's not just about like, you know, is it going to 100x in this cycle? Probably, actually, this one probably is, but it's more about like the actual intention and tech behind it and what it's here to do. That's really the greater impact that it will have on our lives, rather than just a project that's going to 100x. Lovely if it does. No, we don't have any problem with that too, but like it's really fascinating to see some of these how these projects are going to change the way that we do things and change the way that we exist in the world. Like it's really, really interesting.
Totally. I think like crypto as a culture has this, like it's really built around radical freedom and this idea that there are no rules, you know, and then everyone always says like regulation's going to help it. I think that parts of it are regulatable, right? Like when you make all this money in crypto, you eventually have to like withdraw and bring it back into your local currency, and that's when the government's like, where'd you get this from? Tax. Right? And you know, I think that there's so much money, and like you mentioned it before, Claire, about real world assets. You know, how do we bring assets on chain? There's another coin, I mean, for any of your listeners that has also caught my attention in terms of real world assets and doing something with crypto. And here's another thing with crypto. If the coin and if the project,
are you going to say Rio?
If the coin is solving a problem that cannot be solved without crypto, that's where I'm in. If that's like can be solved without crypto, like I'm not phased. So there's a low cap gem project, which I believe has the potential to be a future blue chip, because it's taking real dollars, euros, and converting it into crypto through the technology that it has. It's called the Alchemy exchange. It trades under ADS. Very unique technology in that basically the short idea of it is all the advertising you see around the internet is done through is opaque, and it's a very shady industry. So like companies like Adidas and Nike, when they advertise, they're losing like 1/4 of their budget, or more. They're losing they're losing more than half their money in like these shady spamming clickbait things where like they don't know who's actually clicking on the ad. Anyways, the Alchemy exchange, they're actually able to do things much cheaper, much more affordable, and they're using crypto infrastructure to facilitate this. And I do believe that coin could really, really set apart. So I'm very bullish on that, very bullish on Tau. And Tau also, this bit tensor, what's unique about it is also it's a novel consensus mechanism. It's using this idea of proof of intelligence. It's got miners around the world, you know, different harvesting different data around AI models in different sectors of AI in a way that can't be done in the private sector. So interesting times we're living in. I'm excited to see where all this goes. And I feel like we're lucky and we're fortunate that we have our eyes on this whole thing, and that we're looking at it through the lens of astrology and through the lens of consciousness and through the lens of like, how does this make the world a better place to live in? And I really appreciate that, you know, you're both women, that you're in this space, which is so male dominated, and you bring this beautiful feminine energy and this, we need more of it. We need more of this energy to balance out like what's happening. And the masculine is great, but like balance is so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And I think it's really interesting to tie this sort of all up, is that like you touched on it earlier in terms of like US capitalism, how it's always a winner and a loser. And even with crypto, people are always like, we got to pick the winner. Who's going to win? Who's going to win? And it's like, well, guys, if you zoom out, like we're creating a whole new world here. This is like the rails and the infrastructure of a whole new world. There's going to be many winners. You know, there's going to be many different uses. Like, you know, probably Bitcoin is the hard sound money, store of value. Ethereum has its purpose. Tensor has its purpose. We have all of these different projects which come together to create this new world that we exist in. So I think instead of viewing things through the lens of like black and white capitalism, it's like lean into that Aquarian energy of being able to like hold a kind of like multiple perspectives at once.
Agreed. Totally. I think that there's going to be winners, but that's also one of the reasons I'm looking at when I say the word infrastructure. Like, there's going to be many winners in the crypto space, and for sure, like there's going to be the Amazons and the Googles and the Facebooks, right? There's going to be different ones that specialize in certain areas. Still feel like there's some sort of rails or some sort of like network underneath it all that will unite it all along the way. Like it's all very disparate right now. It's all just like siloed different layer ones and layer twos and all this type of. So I'm curious to see where this all takes us. And the level of innovation in crypto is astounding. I mean, it's taking the best minds in the world are attracted to it. It's a higher dimensional form of thinking, right? There's like something blockchain technology in general, like distributed ledger technology. There's like higher dimensional math inherent within it. The possibilities are endless. And when we look back at our world and we want to apply these ideas, they're not easily applicable because the infrastructure isn't there to do this in a feeless way or to do this for free. I think crypto will really take off when people don't even realize they're using it. When they open an app on their phone and they don't even realize that it's like operating in some sort of crypto. And that's when it will really take off. Where you don't need like a wallet and like to know like what a seed phrase is. Like it's still a little complicated, and it's still like there's a lot of opaqueness, and there's ways to make money in it, sure. And if you figure that out, great. But where we're going to see it enter the real world is like with this Alchemy exchange one, where someone clicks on an ad, they don't even realize that took place on a crypto exchange. You know, like that's pretty wild. Like if I'm on a news site and I click on an ad, I didn't know that someone like there was crypto involved in that. Like what? So I think that enter the real world, that's how it will really take hold.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so fascinating. And is there anything that you, as we close this off, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah. Hope in a better future, and believe in your own ability to carve out your own path. Take responsibility for everything that's happening around you, and nothing is happening to you. Everything is happening with you. As we continue to see the collective in the world and the news cycle continue to pump us with negativity as things continue to happen, and what might be called crises or catastrophes or natural disasters, turn it off, go inside, go within, take a walk. It's really just like there's so much fear being pumped into us at all times that it's hard to take a breath. Take a breath, breathe, focus on your inner joy. Technology is so beautiful. It's a point of connection, but it cannot replace the look when we look into someone's eyes, or a hug, or like a meal made by a loved one. There's something there about human connection at the essence of all this. And if we want to make the world a better place with technology, that's awesome. But like no one to unplug and no one to just be like, oh my God, I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I look at my phone as it's very feminine, it's formless. Like I could just get lost in it. There's no structure, and there's something here about like creating limits, like charge your phone outside your bedroom. Like, yeah, you have to get out of bed to go get it in the morning. Are you going to go get it? Read a book, like it's funny to say this we're talking about Bitcoin and technology, but I think there's a big counter push within Aquarius also of like use technology for good, but also unplug. And so my advice.
Oh, that's so beautiful. So beautiful. Where can people find more of your amazing work? Where can people connect with you?
Sure. So my website is meadowastrology.com, like Meadow, like being in Meadow. Andrew Meadow Astrology, and then also on Twitter or X as Andrew Sear. That's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yes, thank you so much for all the insight. And yeah, I look forward to following along more of your creations and what you continue to share during this time, this transformative time.
Yeah, absolutely.
For having me.
You're most welcome. Peace, love, and Bitcoin.
Peace, love, and Bitcoin.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bitcoin Zodiac podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussions about the evolution of Bitcoin viewed through the lens of financial astrology. This podcast does not offer financial advice, so please make sure you do your own research. And stay tuned for our next episode where we will continue to dive deeper and build off these perception-expanding topics. Remember, whatever your beliefs may be, we all have something to learn from each other, so stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring the world of Bitcoin and astrology. As always, may the stars align in your favor and your crypto investments prosper. Until next time, peace, love, and Bitcoin.